Okay, this is the video tutorial that goes with lesson 7.2. And this is dividing by binomials. So in the last last lesson, we actually looked how you divide if there's just one term here and how you split the question up. You do this term divided by this term divided by this, and this term divided by this. Now, we could do this for this question, but unfortunately, we don't know how to work out x squared divided by x plus 2. And we don't know how to work out 5x divided by x plus 2. So we're going to use a slightly different method. We're going to go back to looking at tiles again. We're going to look at the fact that we know this represents our area because we can see the x squared here. And this could represent a length. And what we're really trying to find out is we're trying to find out the factor. We're trying to find out this times by what gives us this. Now, we know from our algebra tiles map that normally we're given this, and then we can work out the thing that goes in the middle. So what we're going to try and do is the thing in reverse. We know what goes in the middle here. That's the x squared plus 5x plus 6. And we know what goes down the side here. That's the x plus 2. And then from that picture, what we're trying to work out is what's the factor that goes across the top. So this is how we're going to do this. So first of all, I've got one big square. That's why I've set up my one big square right at the start. And that always goes in the top left. Oops, like that. Now, I can see that there's 5 rectangles, and it's very tempting to want to start dragging out the rectangles. The only thing is, though, there's 2 different types of rectangles here. So we're not quite sure how many goes here and how many go down here. So it might be a case of it could be 4 and it could be 1. It could be 3, it could be 2, it could be 5, it could be 0. Now, there might be some clues sometimes when we do these questions in the fact that, oh, look, well, you can kind of see here that there are 2 rectangles. And that might tell us then that if there's 2, when I'm doing 5 here, that there's going to be a remaining 3. What we should really do is we should focus on the squares here. So we should focus on these 6 here. So I'm going to ignore my rectangles just for a second, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fill this in. So my first one goes level with the bottom of this square here. And you can kind of see that I've got my little cross shape again, just like I did when I had my grid previously. So the reason I'm putting 2 here is I'm just lining it up with these 2. But I'm leaving the space here because I know this is where the rectangles go. And you can actually nicely see now those 2 rectangles. But I don't need 2, I need 6. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in the rest of my shapes here. 2, 3, 4. 5. And 6. And now I've got my outside of my shape, I can just go ahead and fill in my rectangles. Now, the important thing is about this number here, this 6. It must be something that divides by this number here too. Because if I had to say it's like 7, then I would have 1 extra square here, but it wouldn't fill in my rectangle. I've got to make a rectangle with each of these little shapes here as I'm filling them in. So let me go ahead and just fill in those rectangles just so you can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can indeed see that this part here is x squared plus 5x plus 6, as we're supposed to get in the question. And now we can use this to figure out what is my factor across the top. So by looking at this length here, I can see that this will be x. We, of course, know x times x is x squared as well. And also, just by looking at this here, I can see that this would be my little squares. 1, 2, 3. So actually, my missing factor for this question then would be x plus 3. So that's the kind of aim that we're looking for. So we're trying to fill in the denominator as one of our factors along the side. We're going to fill in our big squares across the top. We're going to fill in our little squares in this bottom right-hand corner. And then from there, hopefully we can fill in what the missing rectangles will be. It's easier when the questions are all pluses. And that's kind of the reason why I didn't fill in the rectangles straight away. Sometimes if there's negatives, it's not as obvious. Like if it was 5, it's possible it could have been 6 and -1. It could have been 7 and -2. So it's easier to do the little squares first. And then once I filled in my rectangles, I can go ahead and I can actually work out what this factor is. Now, I'm actually going to take this straight out for a second because the video is going to show you something that hopefully you would discover for yourself. But I know because of time, if you were absent, you might not have time to notice this. look, you could actually do this straight away just from these two numbers here. Notice that once you've got the square in here, you can figure out how many rectangles you've got here. And by the fact that I had my 3 rows of 2 here, I knew immediately I was going to have my 3 rectangles here. But notice these match up as well. So 1, 2, 3. Actually fills in my 1, 2, 3 here as well. So actually, when we're doing these questions, we can actually just fill in the squares part of this. And that actually might be enough for us to figure out what actually the answer is for these questions as well. Okay, let's take a look at another one that's definitely going to be a little bit more complicated this time. Not just x squared, I've got 3x squared, which is why I've set out my 3x squareds here. Minus 10, so I put out minus 10 here, and divided by x minus 3. Now, actually, there's a mistake in this question. This is actually supposed to say minus 6, but I'm going to leave this right now because I think this is important for you to realize why this question doesn't actually work. So I'm going to start off with my 3x squareds. So I'm going to put my 1x squared there straight away. Now, as I'm filling in my other x squareds, I'm not going down here because I'm level with a little square. I want to stay level with this rectangle. So I'm just going to put these in the top here. 1, 2, 3. Now, as I'm filling in my negative 10 as it is right now, I'm going to go level again with that bottom corner here. And I'm just matching these up. So I can see this has something to do with 3s, but it's just a case of how many 3s. So 1, 2, 3. You can see I've got my little rectangle here. Well, clearly I've not used all my tiles yet, so let me keep going. 4, 5, 6. And if I was to keep going, I'm sure you can see this group of 3 here, but I'd have 1 left over here. And then this wouldn't actually make a rectangle. So this is one of the reasons why this question can't be negative 10. This number here has to divide by this number here. Otherwise, I can't set this question up nicely at all. So remember, this is supposed to be negative 6. So I'm going to leave this as negative 6. Now, if I was to fill in my rectangles here, I'm hoping you can see 1, 2, 3 here, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then here I have 2. Now, obviously 9 and 2 is 11, which is clearly not what this says because it says negative 7. But notice I've got my negatives here. So actually, as I fill this in, this would be negative 9, and then this would be positive 2. And negative 9 plus 2 indeed does give me negative 7. So as I was to fill this in here, as these are positives, perhaps I'll just put those 2 in just to make it easier to see. As I'm working out my answer now, I can see that it's 1, 2, 3 x's. If I was to drag these across the top, 1, 2, 3, whoops, into that last space. So you can see that there'd be 3 rectangles here, and then I'd have 2 little squares that go here. So my answer for this one would be 3x plus 2. And like I say, you can fill in the whole picture, but just for speed while you're watching this, if you were absent, that's how you would go. Now, this one doesn't have 3 terms here. So actually, this has 1x squared. And I kind of skipped this example just so I could show you straight away on the questions how you do this. So I'm going to fill in my x squared straight away. I filled in my x plus 4 down the side here. Now, notice there's no little squares at all that go here. So the only other thing I have to fill in is 4 rectangles. So 1, oops, 2, 3, and I know I'm not doing this perfectly neatly, but there we go. So I've got my little shape here, and you can see hopefully across the top that it's just x, and that would actually be the answer for this question. If you divide x squared plus 4x by x plus 4, you actually end up with x. X squared plus 6x plus 5 divided by x plus 1. So I got x plus 1 down the side. Here's my x, and then I got 5 little ones to fill in. Now, I'm only going 1 deep for this one, so I'm going to put 1 here. And then as I continue, I'm just going to keep going across until I get to the number that I actually want. 3, 4, 5. And hopefully you could see here there's 1 rectangle, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which is indeed what I'm looking for. So as I fill in my answer, I would have 1x. And then 5 little ones across the top. So x plus 5 would be my answer for that question. And if I'm doing this one, I got x plus 2 down the side here. It says x squared, so start with one big square. I need 8 little squares for this one, so start in that bottom corner, and I'm going to match them up in 2s. So as it says 2 here, and then I'll do the same for the rest of the shape. 3, 4. Notice, of course, 8 divides by 2, which is why I'm going to be able to do this. Like if this said 9, then I know this question is going to be a problem for me. 5, and oops, I'm not sure why it stops 1 short for this one. You can always click copy and paste, and it will give you an extra square. There we go. So we filled that one in. And then now from here, we could actually figure out the answer. X, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, x plus 4. And if you want to go ahead and fill in the rectangles just to show that there was 6 there, you could go ahead and do so. All right, go ahead and work through the rest of the questions. Hopefully you'll start to notice a few things as you're filling these in, get that feel for where the questions are coming from, and get the feel for why we're doing this area map. The fact that if we're trying to work out what two things multiplied together make this, then we can just say it's this divided by this will tell us what this is. So we're kind of reversing the question. Last unit, we did this times this equals the middle part, which is here. This one here, we're giving you the answer, but we're only telling you one of the things. So to do that, we're going to divide.